fundamentally happening here is that you have a medical educational system which is flipped on its head.
Was that Dr. Shiva?
Yes, it was. Yep, I have to reopen that video for some reason. 1 second here.
What's fundamentally happening here is that you have a medical educational system which is flipped on its head, okay? The medical students do not really learn the body is a system. It's a system, it's a system, it's a system. And what is a system? It's a set of interconnected parts from which the whole emerges. They don't study it that way. They study parts. That's why you have a cardiologist, a nephrologist, right? A neurologist, an endocrinologist. Go down the ologists, right? Mm-hmm. Because they study things in isolation. So you could go and you have a problem over here, or you could go and have a problem and you may get sent to 5 or 6 specialists because the insurance, everyone makes money off of that. No one is looking at you. And the reason they're not looking at you, because it's all about big pharma. Find this disease, this medicine. Triage it to a disease. That's wartime medicine. Health Rights Act. That we need to decentralize healthcare. We cannot have a top-down mandated medicine. And that's what we're right in that inflection point, Jason. We're at a point, this is not about a virus. This is about freedom versus slavery. That's what this is about. Will it be the forces of truth, freedom, and health that win, or will it be the forces of power, profit, and control? And that's what everyone should think about. And the good news is everyone has a lot of power. You know why? Because there's more of us than them. Okay? So this is the issue is how many people can we educate with the revolutionary knowledge? Because when you have revolutionary knowledge, then you can go to the core. And that's the humble sort of catalytic act I'm trying to do. If we go down to understanding systems, that's like that's like splitting the atom versus burning wood. Okay, you get a much powerful reaction. And that's what people need to understand. What I'm talking about here is to teach people how from a nuclear perspective versus from burning wood all day, okay? And that nuclear knowledge is understanding that everything is a system. And once people understand that, no one can fool them. But if you don't understand that you're a system and these things are interconnected, you're always going to be fooled. So we have a lot of very foolish, educated people who come out of these institutions with a degree, but they don't study anything about anything being a system. So they're essentially creating automatons. So we don't need to get to robots. We already have robots. We're literally at a juncture. Are we going to go to a golden age where human beings exist, where it's not someone on an assembly line, which is what China wants to do, make everyone automatons? Are we going to be free human beings, or are we going to be slaves?
You're listening to the Vonu Podcast, the podcast making you invulnerable to the coercion of the state and the servile society. Visit our website for free resources to aid you in your pursuit of self-liberation, old Vonu publications, podcasts, guest articles, and much more. Go to vonupodcast.com. And now, your hosts, Shane and Jason.
All right, and welcome to the Vonu Podcast, the podcast making you invulnerable to coercion. I'm your host, Shane, coming to you today with another live stream. As always, please feel free to drop any questions or comments in chats. I'll certainly be paying attention to it. But yeah, today I'm joined by a good friend, Darrell Becker. Darrell runs ContentSafe.co with a recent guest, Matthew Raymer. He is a licensed acupuncturist and more generally an entrepreneur located on the Big Island of Hawaii. He's well-versed and sought out for education on the Trivium method and voluntary communication, nonviolent communication. I'll have him provide some more background on what he does momentarily, but that will work for now. He's been a guest on Liberty Under Attack Radio a number of times. On March 13th, 2016, we had him on to chat about the Trivium method of education, critical thinking. We'll do a quick refresher of that today, as it does pertain to our discussion. Then in the months of October and November of 2016, we embarked on a couple episode series discussing scientific consensus and the crisis of modern science more generally, conflicts of interest and publication biases within the major medical journals, p-hacking, making things look more statistically significant than they really are, of the overall failure of reproducibility, and just really bad science in general. And in 2017, we went deep into the philosophic corruption of reality, physics, which laid out the historical backgrounds and context, as well as where science really went off the rails. This is the anti-scientific scientism and scientific consensus that is so prevalent today. Rather than actually pursuing truth, just trust the authorities. Instead of trusting politicians, we are now being hyper-conditioned to trust scientists and doctors, as James Corbett laid out in his recent Propaganda Watch reports. And it makes sense, really, because people don't trust politicians anymore. They really don't. So, they do trust lab coats, though. They do. Anyway, as you can tell, we are not new to these topics, even though they may not be a primary focus of discussion here on the Vonu podcast. So the plan for today is this. We'll go through a post that's been circulating on Fascist Book, allegedly from a medical page, which will serve as a good foundation for our discussion. We'll talk about how the idea of scientific consensus and the crisis of modern science are allowing modern tragedies to transpire, and really serious tragedies, unemployment, economic collapse, iatrogenic death, etc. We'll give a brief overview of the Trivium method and how the rejection or ignorance of this Trivium method of education is permitting such tragedies to happen, among other things. So without further ado, Darrell, welcome to the Vonu podcast. Or I would say welcome back, but you haven't been on this podcast before. You've been on the other one. So how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's so great to join you again.
Yes, indeed. I always really enjoy. We do all this stuff live, guys. So I'm flipping things around as I'm as I'm talking. But I always enjoy our conversations. There's obviously a lot of other stuff we could talk about. This isn't the only thing that we're both knowledgeable on. But I think at least at this point in time, I think it's really important for us to have this conversation we're going to have today. So. I guess to begin, you've been sheltered in place there in Hawaii since I guess it's probably been a week or so, right? So how's that going? Are you staying safe out there?
Very safe. Yeah, you see, it's interesting because I keep going about my daily life. I got a bit of a paycheck job that I go out that's called Essential, where I go out and work for some clients. And it's true that I was doing great with my holistic healthcare practice, being an acupuncturist for January and February. And then all this crap hit in March, and that just tanked that part of the business. So I had to, up hours and money from other sources. And I continued to go out and do what I'm going to do and buy stuff as I'm going to buy it, like ever. Like I've never stopped with that. But I have had a bunch of friends who fully went the whole quarantine, 14 plus days, like sheltering in place and that kind of thing. And yeah, that really cut down like my in-person social circles for sure.
Yeah.
That's like some of the impact over here. They keep giving the stats on our island numbers of who was tested positive and who's been in recovery and all of that kind of thing. Number is up to 33 on the island who allegedly tested positive. We'll get into that testing at some point today. Mm-hmm. And then, the majority of them are all recovered and that kind of thing. And yeah, it's been really weird to go and see the evolution of how hard it is to get into a store to buy stuff and waiting
shit.
with these taped off lines and things of that nature. And came upon my first store that required a mask to go into. It was actually a fishing tackle store. So that's how I would say the whole sheltering in place thing goes for me, meaning I don't do it. All the beach parking lots are closed here. Like they've shut it off from cars, but essentially like all shoreline access has always been and always probably will be 100% available to all people, especially if you're fishing,
Mm-hmm.
So there are actually laws in the book saying that even if you owned like that section of the coast, people still have the right and ability to access the coast everywhere.
Well, that's a positive.
There are no private coasts on this island. Yeah, it has both like positive and negative impacts, but it's true that in this time, a lot of people are just going out there to bring fishing rods and like
Right.
their whole families all, out there doing their thing. And there's a lot of people who are in fear who aren't going out. True. There's that too. So we're going to get into the divide conquer dichotomy of what's going on as well. That's an interesting aspect.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. But before we get into that, I want to give you an opportunity. We talked about contentsafe.co with Matthew on here a week or two ago. So my listeners should be familiar with that, and I'll certainly point them in the direction of my interviews with Matthew on Content Safe. But I wanted to give you an opportunity. I mean, obviously with I'm not sure if you've looked into Event 201, but with the calls for censorship there, for alleged disinformation and misinformation, for really alternative theories to the World Health Organization. Censorship is a growing problem. It hasn't ever not been a problem, but it seems to be ramping up. So that's what you and Matthew are trying to do over there at Content Safe. So I'll turn it over to you, and I guess tell us about Content Safe a little bit on your part.
Thanks, Shane. So contentsafe.co is a company designed to basically take content producers, video and audio, and sometimes even written, and just make sure that their content can be mirrored on other places, sites such as BitChute and DTube, D-Link, Brighteon, and like Vimeo as needed, like everywhere that can be set up. And so everything I named, but except for Vimeo, is, they were pretty much really, really solid platforms for having the material stay there that you put there, that kind of thing. To make it easier for content providers, because obviously using a standard podcast channel, using YouTube, for example, like I would say, like I still highly support like this and other controversial items to be put up there on those channels. And definitely Content Safe provides that service too. You can directly upload, content producers can directly upload to Content Safe, and then it gets put everywhere that they want it to go at the time intervals that you want it to go there. There are other services we provide, like such as backing everything up just in case. But for the most part, it's all about the publishing. We're keeping your content safe by publishing it in multiple places and making it easier, because if you're a solopreneur, like single content producer, it takes time to upload to each of those places. So we do that service for people. And yeah, at this time right now, it is a really freaky time to be a content producer with anything that would be called controversial. Like I got an awesome friend who's supporting his whole family over in Vermont, and he, his channel Ukulele Zen is just like really, not controversial at all. It's all musical and whimsical and entertainment purposes. So he's not in any way like a likely candidate. But then there's, everyone like from the little bit of Jason Burmis clip that you were showing me with Dr. Shiva recently, and I certainly saw a production with David Icke on London Real, for example, and that was immediately taken down from YouTube, and that was a really good show. Actually, it was kind of interesting to see. But in this day right now, just to sum it all up, contentsafe.co, we're a company that serves content producers who just want to make sure that your content is bulletproof. That is basically it's going to stay where you put it. And it can be indeed taken down from YouTube and Facebook and other places like that. But the important part is that you direct your actual subscribers and viewers and listeners to the places where it's going to stay, such as Brighteon and BitChute and other platforms that, generally speaking, are very, I would say, tough against censorship right now. Those places will, you put that stuff there, it's going to stay there. Yeah. Offering the service of tracking shadow banning and making sure that your stuff goes back up onto mirrored sites onto YouTube, or that keeps going back up, that's another service we provide.
Very good, very good. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely crucially important. And I'm sure you saw the Burmis clip at the beginning. He actually got his whole channel demonetized, I guess this past week. So he might need some. I don't know. I mean, he's got BitChute, but he might be someone to reach out to for Content Safe. Just something I thought of here. But you were also doing for a while crypto consulting. Are you still doing that?
I still do a little bit of that. It's quite a great market right now. I think that my perspective on cryptocurrency investments has changed a lot since the last time we talked. I very much focus
I'd
on
be
it
concerned
as
if it
a
hadn't.
yeah. I focus on the aspect of volatile coins like Bitcoin and Ripple and all the other top altcoins. They are very useful for making money. That's what they're there for, as far as I'm concerned, to do. They're amazing tools for making more wealth. And all you have to do is know how to track the market and throw in at the low, which is, recently and now, and then make sure that you know what your risk and reward ratios are. So that's kind of how I like to do it nowadays, to set people up to make sure that they know what their risk and reward ratios are. Like if it drops 5%, for example, they'll risk 5% and then they're taking it right out. So they'll lose 5%. Mm-hmm. And if once it gets to their reward level, say if it was like to gain 30, 40%, that's when they take out their winnings, Mm-hmm. And I like to set people up to know how to do that, but I mostly work for beginners over here. There are troublesome regulations in Hawaii regarding certain cryptocurrency businesses like Coinbase, for example. I recommend Uphold, which works over here on the island, uphold.com, and very useful for getting in and out of that market. Very pro crypto.
All right, very good, very good. And the other thing, and I wasn't actually aware of this. You mentioned a new project you were working on before we went live. Do you want to tell the listeners about that, or is that still, I guess, private knowledge at this point?
Oh, it's gestating, but I'll make it public now. Though the production values are not like where I want it to be right now. I started a YouTube channel, Not Medical Advice, where I get to showcase medical options that you never heard of or never seriously considered to treat chronic illnesses and injuries. Those are the things that the standard medical system and people out there, medical doctors, they are notorious for sucking hard, really, really doing a bad job at treating chronic conditions in an effective way without causing new chronic conditions with their treatments, basically, or killing you, which is always a high likelihood. And that kind of thing. So I've been in the business of holistic healthcare for 22 years. So I get to go into stories in this channel. I get to launch into a story of how I was treating someone, or how I had a long distance client where I found how exactly I found effective practitioners wherever they were, and how to direct them, how to use the practitioner so that they can get the effective situation they want out of it, basically. I cover types of practitioners such as a certain small subsect of a chiropractor, applied kinesiologists and clinical kinesiologists, certain types of naturopathic doctors, acupuncturists, similar to myself, though also different, and of course how to use their MD, their general practitioner, other types of practitioners, dentists, etc., to get the results that they want. Basically, to build your team and make them do what you want, and make sure that they do not do what you don't want. You're 100% responsible for all of what you hear in my show, Not Medical Advice, and I am 0% responsible for everything that you do with your life in general, especially with things that I put on an entertainment show on YouTube.
Right.
And yeah, that's a really, really tiny channel. I have very few subscribers. I'm trying to get boost up my production value and content production, as that's my plan, and that's Not Medical Advice. And notmedicaladvice.co that's the part that's in infancy. So that I want to I'm going to work on that website a lot more to make a nice sales funnel. And in general, I make the videos to entertain and to give people options, and then from there, I'm giving out a freebie guide to how to, some 9 questions to ask and answers to look for a holistic healthcare provider, so you can get results. And then from there, the upsell, of course, is spend some time with me, $100 an hour, and I will definitely consult for you. I will help you find an effective holistic healthcare provider pretty much wherever you are, how to interview them and how to get results from them. That's what I do.
Awesome. Very good to hear. Very good to hear. The information is definitely necessary, and I mean, there's a lot of people freaked out about their health right now. So I think it's a good time to get into that market. Definitely think so, and especially for folks like me who got into this game late. Got into it a little late, I guess you could say. But I guess we'll go ahead and get into this fascist book post that I referenced at the beginning, and just gonna I'll provide the disclaimer. It came from Fascist Book. It was just from a medical page, but I mean I guess this is, since I've found this, I've heard this brought up a number of times in other places. So not that really lends any credibility. I'll leave it to you guys for your judgment, but I'll go ahead and read it now. Quote, I work in the healthcare field. Here's the problem. We are testing people for any strain of a coronavirus, not specifically for COVID-19. There are no reliable tests for a specific COVID-19 virus. There are no reliable agencies or media outlets for reporting numbers or actual COVID-19 virus cases. This needs to be addressed first and foremost. Every reaction to COVID-19 is based on totally flawed data, and we simply cannot make accurate assessments. This is why you're hearing that most people with COVID-19 are showing nothing more than cold flu-like symptoms. That's because most coronavirus strains are nothing more than cold flu-like symptoms. The few actual novel coronavirus cases do have some worse respiratory responses, but still have a very promising recovery rate, especially for those without prior issues. The gold standard in testing for COVID-19 is laboratory-isolated, purified coronavirus particles, free from any contaminants and particles that look like viruses but are not, that have been proven to be the cause of the syndrome known as COVID-19 and obtained by using proper viral isolation methods and controls, not PCR that is currently being used, or serology, antibody tests which do not detect viruses as such. PCR basically takes a sample of your cells and amplifies any DNA to look for viral sequences, i.e. bits of non-human DNA that seem to match parts of a known viral genome. The problem is the test is known not to work. It uses amplification, which means taking a very, very tiny amount of DNA and growing it exponentially until it can be analyzed. Obviously, any minute contaminations in the sample will also be amplified, leading to potentially gross errors of discovery. Additionally, it's only looking for partial viral sequences, not whole genomes, so identifying a single pathogen is next to impossible, even if you ignore the other issues. The Mickey Mouse test kits being sent out to hospitals at best tell analysts you have some viral DNA in your cells, which most of us do most of the time. It may tell you the viral sequence is related to a specific type of virus, say the huge family of coronavirus, but that's all. The idea these kits can isolate a specific virus like COVID-19 is nonsense. And that's not even getting into the other issue, viral load. If you remember, the PCR works by amplifying minute amounts of DNA. It therefore is useless at telling how much virus you may have. And that's the only question that really matters when it comes to diagnosing illness. Everyone will have a few viruses kicking around in their system at any time, and most will not cause illness because their quantities are too small. For a virus to sicken you, you need a lot of it, not a massive amount of it. But PCR does not test viral load, and therefore can't determine if osteogenesis is present in sufficient quantities to sicken you. If you feel sick and get a PCR test, if you feel sick and get a PCR test, any random virus DNA might be identified, even if they aren't at all involved in your sickness, which leads to false diagnosis. And coronaviruses are incredibly common. A large percentage of the world human population will have COVID DNA in them in small quantities, even if they are perfectly well or sick with some other pathogen. Do you see where this is going yet? If you want to create a totally false panic about a totally false pandemic, pick a coronavirus. They are incredibly common, and there's tons of them. A very high percentage of people who have become sick by other means, flu, bacterial pneumonia, anything, will have a positive PCR test for COVID, even if you're doing them properly and ruling out contamination simply because COVIDs are so popular. I mean, he's shortened for coronaviruses there. There are hundreds of thousands of flu and pneumonia victims in hospitals throughout the world at any one time. All you need to do is select the sickest of those in a single location, say Wuhan, administer PCR tests to them, and claim anyone showing viral sequences similar to a coronavirus, which will inevitably be quite a few, is suffering from a new disease. Since you already selected the sickest flu cases, a fairly high proportion of your sample will go on to die. You can then say this new virus has a CFR higher than the flu, and use this to infuse more concern and do more tests, which will of course produce more cases, which expands the testing, which produces yet more cases, and so on, and so on. Before long, you have your pandemic, and all you have done is use a simple test kit trick to convert the worst flu and pneumonia cases into something new that doesn't actually exist. now just run the same scam in other countries, making sure to keep the fear message running high so that people will feel panicky and less able to think critically. Your only problem is going to be that, due to the fact that there is no actually new deadly pathogen but just regular sick people you are mislabeling, your case numbers and especially your deaths are going to be way too low for a real new deadly virus pandemic. But you can stop people pointing this out in several ways. Number 1, you can claim this is just the beginning and more deaths are imminent. Use this as an excuse to quarantine everyone and then claim the quarantine prevented the expected millions of dead. You can tell people that minimizing the dangers is irresponsible and bully them into not talking about the numbers. Number 2, you can talk crap about made-up numbers hoping to blind people with pseudoscience. Number 3, you can start testing well people who, of course, will also likely have the shreds of coronavirus DNA in them and thus inflate your case figures with asymptomatic carriers. You will, of course, have to spin that to sound deadly, even though any virologist knows the more symptomless cases you have, the less deadly is your pathogen. Take these simple steps and you can have your own entirely manufactured pandemic up and running in weeks. They cannot confirm something for which there is no accurate test. End quote. So,
So that sounds like about it.
that's a heck
I
of a
remember
that's a
sharing
heck
that
of a
post myself.
it's a heck of a start, huh?
Yeah.
So
It
what's
is.
so I'm curious. I mean we've got that foundation there. What's your take on what's going on? I'll just kind of ask a general question there. Get your feel for the situation.
Well, I love to couch things with being agnostic in general. I think that there's a great deal of a strong compulsion for people to be certain. Everyone really, really wants to be certain. I would say it's an addiction to certainty. And I don't have that. You know, I've given that one up, basically. I've even given up the perspective that I'm certain that viruses cause disease. Bacteria, various types of fungus and candida, various types of parasites, those seem to have like a larger impact, but I'm seeing more and more evidence showing that viruses are an after-the-fact cell cleanup component of cell death that's going on based on other metabolic functions and poisons and nutritional deficiencies. And yeah, from treating illnesses and injuries for 22 years now, you know, people coming back and paying money over and over out of their pocket to me to do this. I first went into medicine and I was like, yes, I'm going to focus on infectious disease. And I found out that indeed it was the easiest part of the whole thing that I would ever get to do. Chronic injuries took a lot more skill to learn how to treat. Chronic illnesses of a neurotoxin format of heavy metal poisoning and other types of poisoning that resulted in neurological conditions, that is the hardest thing that I ever got to work on. It still is the hardest thing I ever get to work on in my clinic. So my opinion so far is that, you know, just exactly what that post that you just read covers. You know, for years now, if I was going to bet on things, you know, because like and in the end of it all, here's how I deal with my agnosticism and uncertainty, and then the practical reality over on the other side of what am I going to do for a specific client, or in this case for myself. What will I do with the information? And I bet on the worst case scenario. So for me, the worst case scenario is that exactly like you just described it, as is the post you just read. The worst case scenario is there's a false pandemic, a scamdemic, a planned scamdemic. It's being propounded in the same way as when they did AIDS back in the 80s and early 90s, when it had a lot of press, basically. There's not a lot of people who talk about AIDS nowadays, but it was the same exact thing. Faulty tests being used, the same, in fact, some of the same similar technology of reverse transcriptase, like
PCR,
like RT PCR, polymerase chain reaction. Polymerase chain reaction. That's the name of it. It was like floating away. It was like, what's that word? Polymerase chain reaction. The inventor, Kerry Mullis, and everything around him. Kerry Mullis, who invented the PCR test, basically. He did not intend for that test to be used for pathogen testing and was extremely vociferous all the way up until his death of last year, 2019. Kerry Mullis, he won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for inventing the PCR test. And very outspoken the whole time as soon as it was used for testing for the alleged HIV virus. And he, was loudly saying, this does not test for viruses. It just amplifies genetic material. That's what it's there to do. It does exactly what it's there to do. It's completely faulty. I think in general, I would say that the worst case scenario is that faulty tests, if you take one, you could be falsely labeled with being infectious. You could then be put on a list. You could then be forced to be quarantined and stay. I believe that there was some 33 people on this island who are quarantined because they went and took the test. A test which, as has been mentioned before, is around 80% false positive, but I would say is 100% if they've never purified the virus in the first place, and the test has never, ever been proven to show for this new novel thing that hasn't been purified yet. That's not been done. And I think I would say if you're really fascinated about purification, cover the work of David Crow from theinfectiousmyth.com. He goes deep into that. I've been following David Crow for, I would say, pushing 15 years now.
Wow.
From his previous podcast was How Positive Are You? And I like how in depth he has a very, very deep knowledge of these tests, of the actual processes in terms of biochemistry, of what it takes for isolation and purification, and what the proofs are. And obviously, he's looking for the paper that shows the microscopy photo of this. It hasn't been done yet. The worst case scenario is exactly what I'm prepared for, which is that it's that the testing is completely known to be erroneous, and it gets a whole lot of hype. People obviously in the know tanked the economy in various ways. They got out at the top of the market, which is very smart, especially when you have that insider trading knowledge of
Right.
when they're going to release all this media. And all the CEOs step down, because when you're a CEO, you step down, then you're allowed to make your money. You can actually cash in on the stocks that you own. Whereas when you're when you're still a CEO, you're not allowed to do that. Jeff Bezos can't sell his stocks while he is still CEO. He cannot do that. If he did, it would scare the market, and that Amazon would tank, and it would be counterproductive for him to sell. Mm-hmm. So the reasons all these CEOs stepped down is that they had the ability to actually capitalize on this. All the put options and shorting, I'm sure, would be good evidence to look at of foreknowledge of this whole event. And so follow the money is one thing, but also just, following the most likelihood. I'm speaking of the highest likelihood situation. Also, you can follow John Rappaport, nomorefakenews.com. He's had that website since 2001. So he used the term no more fake news way before it was cool, way before Trump made it a much more widely known expression. And the worst case scenario, again, I say, is that this is it's there to sell a false test that will get you in trouble. They could quarantine you. They could prevent you from moving. They could insist that you take toxic drugs. They could put you on a list and insist that you take a toxic vaccine, both of which could hurt or potentially kill you. The antivirals, they are deadly. The certain types of treatments that happen in hospitals, such as intubation, is incredibly invasive and destructive, and many people, a huge percentage, are dying of the treatments. Mm-hmm. If you research and you type in your search engine "death by medicine," author Gary Null, you'll see that there is a humongous number of doctors causing iatrogenic death going on right now. That is a big danger. So again, worst case scenario is that this is a very big danger, for being in the wrong place at the wrong time, being too credible, believing in a test that doesn't work, believing in a medicine that you thought was going to save you, or an intervention like intubation is going to help yourself or your loved one, and watching people die of basically doctor-caused disease, as they always have been for the last 100+ years. That's the worst case scenario. The best case scenario is there's a real virus that really hurts people, a few, most of them old, and many recovering, like 98, 99% people recovering, and that governments are there to help you. That's the best case scenario. I don't prepare for the best case scenario. I prepare for the worst case scenario. I'm more of preparedness and survival kind of guy. So yeah, I'll leave it right there for your next question, because I want to just like, that's where I think is happening. I am agnostic because I don't have a Darrell intelligence agency.
Right.
I can't send my agents out there to risk their life and investigate this, like, and to get behind the scenes in the boardrooms of the WHO and the CDC, and policies driven by the AMA, FDA, etc., the alphabet soup, the Club of Rome, the basically Council of 300. I am not behind any of that. Like, I don't have an insert into that. I think that there's fascinating work, and I have some friends who've researched into the Council on Foreign Relations and what they were saying about pandemic and virus right up to the months of this whole thing and the media blitz that's going on. But yeah, I'm going to leave it there because I'll let you direct the flow from here.
Sure. So yeah, that's I certainly appreciate your view, and I mean it's very very similar for me. Looking at this from the start, I started following it it's probably like January 20th or something, and it wasn't because I was worried about it. I wasn't worried about it at that time, but it just seemed like something to pay attention to. But I guess. When I really started looking into it, and this is where the Trivium method comes in. I had not looked into the field of virology before. Well, I guess to back up, like I'd been looking into health and nutrition, and trying to learn all that complex stuff. So I was listening to some doctors' podcasts, and one of them said, well, if you're going to try to understand, metabolism and all of these things, you need to know biochemistry. So what did I do? I went and found biochemistry classes on like Udemy, and I took the biochemistry courses. Like I went back to the basics, back to the core to learn things from their foundation. And I think that's the main problem with what we're seeing today, is that most people don't do that. They don't go back and critically examine, what testing are they using? Is it reliable? Maybe I should go back and maybe look into the field of virology a little bit and see what their standards are. Oh, Koch's postulates. Let me see, going back to these core, I guess, these fundamental things, and starting from there. And my conclusion has been different than quite a few other people. I think we're both on the same page here. But our conclusion's different than others, because I think we're definitely approaching it from a different way. So I want to transition here to a discussion on the Trivium method, because that's how I approach things now. That's how I that's how I do research. So I guess we talked about this in earlier radio back in 2016. So could you just maybe give us a brief overview of the Trivium method of education and critical thinking?
Yeah, and how it applies to the situation.
Sure.
I'll do that. So it starts with gathering the general grammar. This is data points, and it's also known as knowledge. So it's basically coming up with a series of pertinent who, what, and where, and when questions. As an example, like who invented the PCR test, the polymerase chain reaction test? That's Kary Mullis. What is the test? What is the test composed of? What is it actually designed to do? What did Kary Mullis say about it? Where was it made? Possibly relevant. And where is it being applied right now? Also extremely relevant. Where is this test being used? And in what? And for testing for what specifically? Because there are a lot of PCR tests out there for a lot of viral situations. Basically when was it made and all of that. And that comes down to around the whole time of HIV and AIDS hysteria, a different type of pandemic at that time. One where they did not stop people from flying on planes, since, luckily they didn't claim that one was actually super contagious. So that's the grammar work. Basically, you're just doing, you're saying like, you're removing the period at the end of statements, like you're getting like death numbers and infectious numbers from around the world, like that kind of thing. And you're adding a question mark. Is that really true? You're asking who, what, where, and when questions, and that's the grammar work. And next you move to logic. Logic is asking why questions. It's trying to understand how does the grammar connect to each other, like putting the information into a format. It's putting in like data into a formation, information. That's where that one comes from. And that also, it helps to understand the logical fallacies, informal logical fallacies, I mean, so that you're not just simply appealing to Dr. Fauci, that's an appeal to authority, or appeal to popularity. All the people are saying so. All the people are wearing masks, you know. Those are logical fallacies. You're aware of the logical fallacies. You're saying, no, that's thank you. Logical fallacies are like a red flag to say this data might be corrupted. Hold on a second, and like just be careful. Like down this road, you know, might be faulty. And it's trying to really get a theory of how the knowledge actually works. That's called understanding. And you put the two together, making a like this. So like as a base of the pyramid, there's your grammar, and going up now, there's your logic. You know, you're removing or isolating logical fallacies, and you're seeing how the format of all the grammar works together. And finally, at the top, you're designing an experiments or actually making plans and taking action that delivers a practical and a predictable and desirable result. So when I work in healthcare, everything I do is designed to get to a predictable and desirable result that the client is paying me money for. And if I want them to keep paying me money, I better keep delivering predictable and desirable results that they desired, you know, on a time frame that I am giving them so that they can predict it, basically. So in order to look at things this way, it really takes an open mind. I'm pretty sure back in 2016 when I did the show with you, I might have mentioned that children are born with this method intact. Little children are born with the Trivium method of critical thinking, that of collecting the knowledge and then bringing it together with an abstract understanding in their mind, and then designing a practical application of the knowledge and the understanding together. It just goes up like that. It makes this pretty cool stacked pyramid. And it always comes back to, you know, it goes back in a cycle, always rechecking that grammar. That's why I say I'm uncertain. See, I don't have to have 100% certainty. I think that's for religious people, and that, of course, is the death of actual critical thinking, is 100% certainty. I have certainty right before I take action. And then I question it. I see, how did I do on my action like that? When it comes to researching this stuff, it comes down to, like, do you actually have the resources, like the time and the emotional fortitude, not to mention the intellectual rigor, you don't necessarily have to go to Udemy and do a course on biochemistry like Shane did. You could actually just literally pick points to try to take apart. Like in this case, understand what is viral purification? What are the various theories? There's the germ theory of disease. Are there alternative theories? There is. It's called the terrain theory of disease. It's actually something that Pasteur admitted to on his deathbed. He admitted that the germ is nothing and the terrain is everything right before he died.
Really? He
also admitted to plagiarizing Antoine Béchamp's work. And Antoine Béchamp, I believe, would be the originator of the terrain theory of disease. So it kind of comes down to just looking for like what you might call the minority report in addition to the majority report. There's a history in science of scientific discoveries being made and being suppressed on purpose for decades until all the people who were in the establishment who held the majority opinion, this consensus opinion that was widely promoted and in general used for various levels of profit, they all had to die or go away. And then folks were allowed to discover and look into what was a dissident or minority report opinion. And that's kind of where I'm coming from with this. If you have the resources intellectually and emotionally, you can actually take the time to discover things, especially you at home. Yeah, I'm going to point to you. If you are there and you have a lot of time on your hands, if you have the emotional ability and intellectual rigor to look into questions and start changing your periods into question marks when you're getting data in, and start looking at things. Because I actually have friends who have hurt themselves with too much application of Lysol, which is very toxic. That's a problem as an example. They were more concerned about the problem of the pathogen than what they were actually doing to their body by, constantly wearing a mask, wearing gloves, and scrubbing everything with Lysol and breathing in, huffing a whole bunch of Lysol and taking in like hand sanitizer through their hands, which is also toxic. So there's a lot of misplaced concern, in my opinion, to the wrong things. And again, I could be wrong about that. It's just that the deal is I can actually test certain things, in my practice for myself and my clients. I can do some various types of biofeedback testing that gives me an inkling of like, I think this is toxic. I think this is hurting you. Or I think actually this is helping you, or this is seemingly neutral. And things like Lysol and hand sanitizer, not neutral. Definitely, they seem to show, signs of being toxic, as do many other things. So, yeah, to take the trivium of critical thinking, if you just have that ability, if you're not under trauma right now, like you're constantly visiting a quarantined relative or someone in the hospital or something like that, or someone just died and you're in emotional turmoil, I totally get it. You're not in the headspace to do research. Your critical thinking is probably shit, to be blunt about it. And that's going to happen. If you're not good at thinking while you're under pressure, you're not going to be good at critical thinking. But for you out there who are watching or listening, and you do have the ability, you can actually go back and start like you were as a child before you were corrupted by school and other big people, before critical thinking was damaged, essentially. You can go back and ask those critical questions and seek answers from what I like to call wider and deeper research. So wider refers to looking at sources coming from a lot of different places. So you don't just discount a source because, that David Icke is a conspiracy theory, Green Med Info is conspiracy, Mercola is conspiracy, so I just dismiss it. That's not accurate. If it's got footnotes, then you get to look it up, and that's just a dissident opinion, like that. Like I would have dissident opinions on toxic medicines and vaccines compared to people who just want to presume that they just want to be certain. I think it comes down to that, basically, that critical thinking can be nurtured for those who are in balance, and those who have the time and the skill set, you can actually look things up. I think that's a summary of applying critical thinking to this present situation.
Right. Yeah, that's very good, and I just want to emphasize here another way that I think about the Trivium method. Another way I've heard it explained is it's basically it's the way to learn anything. Like once you learn the method of critical thinking, the method of education of the Trivium, it's basically a tool to learn anything. So whether that's health and nutrition, whether that's anarchist philosophy, whether that's it doesn't matter what it is, you can use this structure of learning and critical thinking for that. And now to refer you guys to the show image that I put out there today. One of the major problems with and I think it's really the problem of the 20th century is trust. Trusting doctors, trusting nutritionists, trusting politicians, trusting economists, rather than and I think that's in large part why the Trivium method has been so abandoned. I mean, it's not necessary. If you're outsourcing all your critical thinking and all of your education to somebody else, then why would you need a method of critical thinking and education? But whenever you take this and you start digging into what I'll say here,
digging into the topic. Yeah, when you start digging into what's going on right now, which is that's like an open-ended wide question.
Mm-hmm.
So then you just narrow the questions down specifically. You want to know, is it dangerous? Well, then you start off with what is it? What is this novel virus? Who has, what is viral purification? These are grammar terms. What does purification entail? And so where's the microscopy? Where's the published test showing the microscopy of purification? David Crow's been looking for this. I think he did a show with him and he hasn't found it yet. Meaning, so it's probably just not there,
Mm-hmm.
Again, they kind of jump the gun on in many cases like this. What is an exosome? That's a question I'm going to cover in my next show, not medical advice. I've got a Dr. Sell from over there in West Coast going to cover that topic and other related topics of what is the evidence showing that viruses are the causal agents of disease?
Right.
And are there alternative theories to that? For a long time, I just took it for granted that I was treating conditions caused by viruses. I'm, a lot more skeptical about that one now. I'm a lot more like open-minded to other possibilities. Kind of interesting thing, by the way, in medicine, I can still get the same results, based on similar actions of how it works, basically. I think for people who have never been to anything other than an MD, a standard medical doctor, there's a lot of other types of medicine practicing styles that get a lot of other results. When it comes to the origins of these things, when you actually do your research, the origins of the American Medical Association official, a sanctioned type of medicine, that goes back to warfare. It goes back to the time of warfare, and they're really good at warfare, which is like sewing on fingers and limbs and being able to remove projectiles that are, not supposed to be in the body, and essentially, do radical surgeries and radical interventions, incredibly powerful medicines, which I have great respect for. And I like to, keep on hand, but rarely use, basically. And then there's all these various other types of medical providers like myself, which are often termed holistic medicine providers, healthcare providers that just are looking at a bigger picture. Me and many of my colleagues, we don't like to call a disease by the name of their symptoms, because that's just naming symptoms again. We like to call the disease by the actual causal vectors.
Right.
So for example, I would say, someone who was extremely adrenal fatigued, you'd need to find out, well, that's the symptom. What is causing the adrenal fatigue? And then when you do some provoked urinalysis test, for example, and other types of biological testing, you could find out that, oh, check out this. Looks like they've got high levels of cadmium, barium, lead, and mercury. They're actually kind of cytotoxic. Their cells are toxic. They're dealing with toxins. In fact, that's why they could never lose weight. This is an example.
Yeah.
So then you'd be finding out, so that's one component. What else? Well, it's also kind of caused them to be kind of acid. So they're kind of super yeasty. They kind of grow in a lot of fungus. That's why their toenails are all fungal, condition, and they've got other fungal conditions. They got inflammation in their gut. And then you could find out, okay, that's the actual situation. Now what you're going to do with it. And you treat all the components in the order that your diagnostic and treatment modality has trained you to do. And if you don't know how to do all of that, that's why you hire a professional, And if you want to learn how to do all of that, all of this is free to learn online, amazingly.
Yep.
Just like it's free to learn what an exosome is or what a polymerase chain reaction test is. Everything is out there to learn right now. Ignorance is a choice.
Yep.
You have to purposely hide from it. So although there's, Shane, there's a lot of availability to look into things right now, I think that in the midst of fear and all of the things going on, people lost their jobs or don't know if they're like going to actually get this stimulus check, or they really hate this disruption to their pattern of life, and they're afraid. Well, those people, like there can be a lot of people, some of them even listening to your show, they're just not in the headspace. They would like to stay right where they are. So I want to mention divide and conquer right now, because I'm pretty sure that of all the ruling class goals that they've enacted right now, Trump was a wonderful divide and conquer tactic on their part in terms of like very effective, not wonderful, like cunningly and malevolently effective. And this is another divide and conquer that's going on right now. Those who wear masks, like those like me who do not wear masks, because I'm not performing surgery. I'm not infectious, and I'm not spitting on people while I'm cutting them open. I don't do surgery. I'm an acupuncturist, and I'm a holistic healthcare provider. I do a lot of things, but I don't cut people. Those who give hugs and touch, like me, and those who do not touch because they're told that that's potentially spreading an infection, and the numbers keep going up that way. Those who go out like me, those who stay in, those who question and those who believe. Those who are frustrated by the lack of the lack of skepticism and the amount of credibility, and those who are frustrated because they're frustrated at the amount of skeptical people, that they want other people to be credible and believe they're basically authorities that know better than them. They have a story that they can't know. They can't know science, so they have to just trust the scientists out there. They're stupid. That's what they say to themselves. They're stupid. They could never learn how to research this for themselves. Those who are hysterical, those who are angry, basically, they're frustrated around people being hysterical and around bad consensus science. And those who would claim that I and others are irresponsible for promoting pseudoscience, being science that is, of course, not of the consensus majority type, but is of the minority report opinion, like dissident scientists, essentially. And those who distrust the majority, like myself, and those who are trusting the majority. So divide and conquer is really going on effectively right now. I want to say I'm really careful when I post nowadays because I see a lot of traumatized people on Facebook and in my real life out there that they just want to know how to deal with a situation. And I have friends on both sides of that divide and conquer that I just described. Those who are definitely doing the whole no touch, staying in, masks and everything like that. Good friends of mine, good podcasters out there doing that kind of thing. And then, there's those like me who I'm like, nope, I'm not buying it, and getting, physical contact is healthy for me. Being out there in the sun and in nature and in the ocean is really healthy for me. So I'm going to keep doing that. Going to take care of myself and other people. I see the economic hit that it makes because I have less clients because more of them are afraid. I have people that paid for sessions that are not coming in. They bought, packages of sessions. They're not coming in.
Yeah.
That happens, but it's not on me to change people's minds and hearts. It's on me to offer an opportunity, the opportunity of essentially, the mental balancing skills of the Trivium, like we just covered. And I like to cover other balancing skill sets to balance the emotional terrain. I think we covered that in at least one show before. I'd say the opportunity is really to be aware of the impact on people that they're not in their best right mind for critical thinking because they're not balanced emotionally either. And they really crave certainty in a time of crisis like this. If they've seen their
that's exactly why the state keeps everyone in a perpetual state of fear. But I just wanted to bring that up. But go ahead.
Yeah, that the point of the divide and conquer was really effective. So anything where my words can be used to promote further divide and conquer, like I don't want to call people stupid or sheeple or other, simplifying labels like that, because they're already doing that for themselves and me and other people. The ruling class just is like laughing it up when all of this is used to create more divide and conquer. I want to make mention that this is an amazing opportunity right now. I'll get to the biggest opportunity last, but right now it's an opportunity in cultivating connection, even in the midst of this. Like I was just thinking, like, connection, like go on Tinder, go find a date. Anyone who would date right now on Tinder, they're awesome, in my opinion. They are awesome people. And because they have no fear, they're ready to go ahead and do it. They're lonely, and the end of the world is not enough reason to stop dating. That's ridiculous. Cultivate patience for the people in your life who are on the wearing masks side and not wearing masks, touching and not touching, staying in, going out, etc. To really, basically incentivize harmony, like in your relationships, so that have extra patience and keep harmony as the goal, the objective, one of the objectives. Like know your objectives and keep that as the goal. Make sure that your words and your actions promote that objective, that create that objective. And make sure that you're using the resources that you have. So if you don't have enough time and energy and patience on a certain person, don't use it there. Use it for people that you want to, There's a market for liberty, Shane. how many people in California were out there buying guns and starting to prep and stock up food? And all over the world right now, a lot of people are understanding that they're in charge of their safety and security. They're in charge of their food safety and security. They're in charge of being prepared for medical situations, for food and health situations. They're in charge of their life. So promote this market for liberty. People want more freedom of movement. So see a need and fill a need is what I'm going to say out there for the entrepreneurs. Like I'm out there to fulfill the need for people who want to find effective healthcare solutions to chronic illnesses and injuries that just resist any effective care for, if you just were relying on your insurance and what a medical doctor is going to generally provide for you. They will provide palliative care. That means you'll feel better for a short period of time. But there will be side effects for some of that palliative care. And some of those side effects could go all the way to destroying you. So I'm saying, just go with that, like the market of liberty. And this is an amazing investment opportunity. That's the thing I got from the Survival podcast. One of the really excellent resources if you want to learn how to be really prepared and in terms of your prepping and getting ready for anything. That guy, Jack Spirko, has been talking for 11 years now. I've been listening to him.
Yeah,
talking about, and this was the thing that he was saying is going to happen as a pandemic. Almost said plandemic, but because it's kind of that's the way it is. I would say he's a great resource on learning how to do that, like store what you eat what you store, like that. And I think that in general, there's a lot of assets in Bitcoin and certain other cryptos or assets or certain stocks that are down. You could see, I'm thinking like Boeing and other packages of stocks. It's an investment opportunity. When the market is down, when people are selling everything, it's the time to buy. When people want more liberty and they're prevented from having it because of authorities, if you can find a way to provide it for people are going to line up for it. It's an opportunity to step into. So that's the kind of high level thing I wanted to plant the seed for right there.
Yeah, and I certainly appreciate that, and that's what I was somewhat trying to drive at, and you are right. That's certainly in the time of panic and fear, it's not the best time for critical thinking and such. But I still think, and this was my mindset, I guess last year too. But it's kind of I guess the way that I kind of conceptualize it is like the homestead mentality, where I have to know how to farm, I have to know how to provide my energy, I have to know how to do all of these things myself. I can't call and outsource that to somebody else. And I think that's kind of I'm going back to a point we were talking about here, but that's the major problem with the modern healthcare system. Is it's so divided. It's so subdivided where you only study the field that you're in, and that's why I really respect the work that you do. Where you've done research into the gut, you've done research into all of these different areas. Whereas if you were just a normal doctor, you would kind of stick to your field unless you're a general practitioner. So I think that's a really important thing, and you're talking about finding resources that empower you to do these things for yourself. Whether that's whether the topic is virology, investing, as you were saying, or homesteading. I really think it's important, especially now, and people are realizing. I mean, it was a really fragile society that we had. And I used we there, but it was a very, very fragile society. And, for folks like us, and you mentioned Jack Spirko, a lot of folks that have been waiting for something like this to happen. But, I mean, it kind of shook a lot of people awake. It really, really did. So, there is a good opportunity here. And maybe, hopefully.
There is, and
good.
I was going to say it took me by surprise. What were you going to, hopefully what?
I mean, yeah, just hopefully, maybe reverse the course of the 20th century a little bit, and maybe back to more self-sufficiency. Maybe this is the great thing to shake people awake. But I don't have a lot of hope in the servile society. But we'll have to see.
I think that I maintain like a consistent level of optimism. I mean, I know I might surround myself with, confirmation bias to some degree, but when it comes to folks who still believe that they still believe and are trusting a majority opinion on things that's being promulgated on, I would say legacy media, etc. That's, there's a certain subsegment of people that I'm connected to and deeply close to and friends with. And not just in my paid life, but in my unpaid life too. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for those folks to distrust the majority opinion and find that there's other answers to look into things, especially it's kind of like the converts in general for medicine. The American Medical Association's patterns of killing 300,000 plus people in America per year, and of course across the other 193 nations and tax farms. There's all these, there's a humongous amount of death going on by following the rules set out. These are the protocols that protect them, that literally they can't be charged with malpractice. That was just people dying from the treatment that's supposed to be the best. And that's one of the dangers of this world. And the people who don't die but just get messed up, a portion of them come into my sales funnel, and I work for them. I work for them here in person. I work for them long distance to find them an effective healthcare provider. And not just one, but I help them build a team and train them how to make their providers work for them. That's the point, basically. So that's why I'm making like the opportunity. Every obstacle is a potential opportunity. And I didn't expect this because I was really trying to pay attention to making money and serving my clients over here for the last couple months. I did not know that they would take it all the way so up the world and stop everyone from flying, and like literally a humongous homeschooling experience for like, billions, millions, billions, I'm not sure, but like a lot of people, a lot of children, like grateful to be done with the stupid schools that they were in. That's for sure. A lot of them now experiencing self-directed education. That's a really great silver lining out there. A lot of parents writing that they will never send their child back to school if they can ever help it. I hope they can manage that one out. That's great. I think there's a lot of things. This really, like I said, it caught me by surprise because I just wasn't paying deep enough attention. I was not really like, I was not taking it nearly as the dire situation of the next craziness. When it comes to the whole thing with the 5G electromagnetic radiation things going on, I'm still of an open mind with that one as well. I don't really know. I do know that there's a high likelihood that I would bet money on, if I had to, that electromagnetic weaponry or like hurting people with electromagnetic tools is and has been going on for a long time. Could that simulate people getting sick of a so-called virus? Like 100%, Could it kill people like in their spot, like, or really rapidly? I think so. The worst case scenario, like I said, that's the principle of being a stoic or stoicism. I prepare for and I visualize the worst. How do I prepare for that intellectually, emotionally, and tactically with, strategy and action? And that could, indeed happen, of just like basically using that, killing people remotely. I mean, the weird way that the Twin Towers turned to dust as they collapsed, basically. That weird lack of seismic signature as they fell. The weird way the Californian fires seemed to happen in photographs and video. Other weird anomalous stuff like that. I would say that it's a better bet for me to prepare for, the worst case, which is electromagnetic weaponry as possible and could be pointed towards lots of people. They could make people die, but a cheaper way to make people die is that they're already dying from standard medical care and they just blame it on the virus.
Yep.
And that is so much more affordable. and it is so much less of the full-on devastation. When the shoe, the other shoe drops is people actually dying. And then the question for me is, what are they dying of? For the credible people who just have a strong credibility issue around the legacy media, they just know instantly that they're dying of what the media says they're dying of: coronavirus, COVID-19, etc. For me, it's like, what are they dying of? That's the question. I'm actually like, can I get my hands on that? Can I actually test it and see it? And yeah, I would, I'll be on that side probably forever, I would say, of always questioning and asking, because I don't build my self-esteem on being right. I build my self-esteem on finding out ways that I got it wrong and ways that I got it right. I have 20 major issues across my life, at least, where I concluded one thing, I looked into it deeper with evidence, and it changed my mind over and over again. I think you got similar lists, Shane, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And
so it's like that.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, and you made a really good point there, and I just wanted to drop this in there. For me, that was that was my approach to it. And if you look at the average health of the population, I mean, people aren't getting healthier; they're getting, like I've said in previous podcasts, obesity is not going down, the rate of diabetes is going up. I mean, children and infants are getting non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Like, it's not a good situation for the world. At least, when it comes to diet and lifestyle. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if, if death rates continue to, like, I guess at least, well, anyway, yeah, like with Italy, obviously the pre-existing conditions, and then, yeah, something I found out just within the past couple of days, and that this is, I guess, so intubation was standard of care. When you went into the hospital, apparently within the first 24 hours, they're intubating patients. Crazy. But this was a doctor that called in, that was on the Laura Ingraham show, and it's faux news, but I think it's an important point here. Quote, anytime healthcare intersects with dollars, it gets awkward. Right now, Medicare is determining that if you have a COVID-19 admission to the hospital, you'll get paid $13,000. If that COVID-19 patient goes on a ventilator, you'll get $39,000, 3 times as much. Nobody can tell me after 35 years in the world of medicine that sometimes those kinds of things have an impact on what we do, end quote. So, I mean, there's other, we've talked about in previous episodes, about the other conflicts of interest, financial or otherwise. But yeah, that's a really, really important one, and the simplest explanation for me, honestly, and it's kind of what you're alluding to just a moment ago, is what's more likely is these people are in poor health anyway, or they might just be really old with pre-existing conditions, and they go in there for treatment, and the doctors are aggressive and they kill them. Like, it just seems like the simplest explanation for me, and it happens a lot, even admittedly by these institutions themselves. So, yeah, for what that's worth.
Yeah, I think it's important to know that this will lead to my question for you, Shane, but that there are a lot of people out there who know someone who died of or COVID-19, allegedly, and they say it like it's a fact. They just know, because they believe the test, and the person is dead, and they're grieving, and they've lost the person that they love, or that they care for, or that they know, or that it's from someone that they know, or someone that works in a hospital, and they're seeing people die. And I've done that thing where I ask, well, but what's the evidence of what they exactly died for? But they died, their lungs went all rubbery, and it was like, it's like something that they'd never seen before. And I was like, okay, but what exactly did they die of? And they'll always come back to, but they died, and they died of, and like, they tested positive. It's like, but what does the test say? But they died. It's kind of like, it's very idiocracy of like, but the plants need, Brondo. It's what plants crave. It's got electrolytes. It's what plants crave. They keep going back in a circle, like saying the same thing over and over. I had the experience like that with several friends who just like, they kind of got in the whole Brondo loop of, it is what they said it is. And but they're dead. And I'm like, but what did they die of? But they're dead, avoiding the question, of course. Have you had any talks like that with people?
Not really. I don't know anyone personally, not even, friend of a friend. I don't know anyone here in the county that I live in. They say there's a handful of confirmed cases, but it's super rural area. Like I don't know how. Like I don't know how. A viral pandemic would I don't know. Like it's I don't know why someone that would be in China would be here. Obviously, the contact can get complicated. But I just, regardless, yeah. There's only been a handful or so folks even in this county. I don't know anyone personally. Most people that I've seen on Twitter that have asked don't know anyone either. But I've seen plenty of reports, like you have. Like I've seen plenty of reports of people knowing people who have died with it. But again,
that's what they say.
Yeah, that's
but
what they say.
Again, they will not go into the detail of what was the testing mechanism, what were the actual medical treatments being given. And then the follow-up question, could it possibly be that they died of the medical treatments, the medicines and treatment, like intubation?
Right.
And if you don't ask and answer those questions, you just don't know. But again, it comes back to these like that divide and conquer thing. I am of the minority. I've trained myself to not crave certainty. I no longer need to be right about subjects. I'm ready to be wrong. In fact, if anything, when I find evidence that shows that I'm wrong, I'll deal with the intellectual impact and the emotional impact. Especially, like as an example, like intellectual impact, I got it wrong for a bunch of years. And as an example, like viruses causing diseases, I might have gotten it wrong for a while. What was the actual impact on clientele? I got them scared about viruses when the real issue were the other metabolic problems and bacterial and fungal and overgrowth and hidden parasite latent infections, plus certain toxicities and deficiencies were the big main deal. Now, luckily, I always knew that. I always knew that the metabolic part and the toxicity deficiency problem was the big deal. Mm-hmm. Like as soon as I got into medicine, that was the main thing I was shown, luckily trained in. But I think that there are a lot of people who just really want to be certain about it. They know people in the medicine, people who work in hospitals, mm-hmm. people who are not as skeptical as the guy that you read that quip from in the beginning of the show. They're just very credible. There's conspiracy theorists and then there's credibility theorists. And I would say, if I want to use labeling, like simplistic labeling like that for the purpose of understanding, there are a lot of people who just really are trusting and they are following a different credible theory. Like in other words, they think that this is the credible one. That's their thing, basically. They build their self-esteem, whether they admit it or not, by having the right conclusion, by not having to change their mind or flip-flop on a subject like this. And the more decades that they've maintained a conclusion, the bigger the emotional impact, because then they'll be having to look back and say, well, what was the impact for me concluding this on other people, myself and other people that I care about? Or random other people as well. What was the impact for having a strong conclusion on, say, the safety of vaccines or the safety of certain medicines or treatments? That would be a really important question to say, well, if the impact was it hurt people and killed them, that's a lot of impact for a certain person to acknowledge. If you were culpable, that you were part of a process of people getting hurt or dying, And some people would make that claim that, like, by what I'm saying is irresponsible because people not getting vaccinated or not taking antivirals is dangerous. I would put it the other way, that the proof, of course, is on the positive claim. Show me that vaccines are safe and effective. I need to see the evidence first, and show me that antivirals are safe and effective. I've seen evidence that is largely to the contrary, right? So far, and again, that whole divide and conquer is going on so well right now. If I could just keep inserting that message into this production, this is an amazing opportunity to really get hold of your head, get hold of your emotional terrain, and find a way to connect to people voluntarily that you want to connect to. Those that where you come up with an idea like that relationship. I really value that relationship with my mechanic, for example. He self-quarantined for the last several weeks, And he finally let himself out, basically. And I actually went over last night and had a hangout with him and his wife and baby.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really great, So people come around. That's what I'm saying. And they don't have to come around. But the important part is just planting the seed like that. The people you want to maintain connections with are vital. Because right now the ruling class loves it. They rub their hands together and like, greedy, evil guy laugh. Whenever we hate on people and call them names like sheeple and like, ostrich with a head in the sand, that kind of thing. They love that when we divide ourselves from our friends and our family and people that like our clients, people we want to do business with, and we actually have a skill set, we can help them, there's so many people to connect with right now. This is a world of interconnected people, and getting people to stand like 6 feet apart, getting people to not touch each other, getting people to distrust each other, getting people on the different sides, like it's a big sporting event. That's something to beware of right now.
That's a good point. It seems like they're trying to scare people away from human contact in general.
That's exactly it. That's why I'll make that push to say anyone who would go out and date right now, anyone who would go and disobey and go and have a hangout, obviously I'm saying don't do this in a way that's going to get you in trouble, because it's never worth dealing with the bludgies, if you can help it.
Right.
Like in general, luckily, I live on the island of Hawaii, aka Big Island, and there is a long history of a pseudo religion called aloha. This idea of people live and let live and leave me aloneism. You do you over there on your place and I'll do me, and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that type of leave me aloneism is rampant across the earth. I think that the market for liberty and appreciating that difference is big. I think that when it comes to like problems, like people snitching on people for going out too much, or, anything possible, I would say, for folks who are, this is a horrible time to have nasal allergies out there in public right now. I can tell you, it's a very bad time to have nasal allergies because there's such a lack of actual clear thinking. I think that the market is to, obviously within bounds, within your own resources of energy and time and money, make those connections to the people that matter to you. Reinforce those connections if possible. If it means going on Zoom or other video contact, and because they're not wanting to be in person, just continue and nurture and maintain the connections that really are going to add up to your being less vulnerable. Because it's great to like have stocked up food like I've got, and probably you've got over there. It's good to stock up on all the supplies that you need, your medicine, your security mechanisms. But when it comes down to it, you're going to need connections,
Mm-hmm.
And you don't just want to have connections to those who think just like you, You'd want to have connections.
Yeah, you need people to trade and barter with.
A variety and spectrum of people. Yeah, exactly. Do business with,
Yeah.
Money is real. Money is not going away. Crypto is not going away. It moves rapidly. I think that it's a really a wonderful opportunity to really like really walk that talk, basically, of the skill set of owning your mind and owning your emotional terrain. And yeah, there's going to be people out there who suck at that. They are distressed. So they're not, and they've never learned critical thinking. And by all means, do not tell them about logical fallacies until they ask or pay you to do so. Okay. Don't do that. Just keep in mind, like the 3-point thing from David Allen, Getting Things Done. Know your objectives. I'm simplifying his 5 points into 3. Know your objectives with every person that you're interacting with. What is it that you're wanting to get out of the interaction? Take the actions that will get to your objectives. Line up the actions in order that, the order of operation that makes the most sense, and take those actions. And make sure that you're tracking the resources that you need, the time, the money, the patience, to take those effective actions to get to your objectives. It's like that, and this is a pretty amazing opportunity. You can learn more about David Allen's work by looking up Getting Things Done, David Allen. I highly recommend it.
Very good. Yeah, and I think that's a great message to begin to close out on. Because I mean that's kind of the theme we've been talking about, obviously over the past few years, but especially over the past couple of weeks, is that connection to the real. What can you do to better yourself? What can you do to make your situation better, despite this shitty situation that we do find ourselves in? Find that connection to the real, because when you look at the Servile Society and just the world in general, whether it's the fiat money, which that's going to be that's going to be an interesting to watch over the next few years. What happens with this funny money economy? I mean, there's really with the science, it's not really connected to reality, right? I mean, what is the PCR testing? PCR testing? Well, now what is it telling us? Not really much useful of anything, right? It's not really telling us. There's the modern science is disconnected from kind of that real as well, from the natural sciences. So I think that's a great thing to kind of close out on, is what can you have direct impact on, that you can educate yourself on something and put that education into action and actually see if it works. I think that's a really, really important point to close out on.
Yeah, I think so. So just if you have that fortitude and the ability to build your critical thinking and asking more questions and seeking a wider spectrum of answers, and I forgot to mention deeper. So that means you spend more time on each of these sources. So narrow would be like, I'm taking it in from legacy media. That's narrow. And shallow, meaning I just basically take what they say at face value and I don't research it any further. Mm-hmm. That's narrow and shallow. And I'm going to suggest wider, many, many sources. You don't impugn the source until you have real evidence to do so. Sources that have lots of links that you can search and check out and verify. That, I would say John Rappaport, nomorefakenews.com. He provides a lot of sources. David Crow at theinfectiousmyth.com. He provides a lot of sources. Those are good ones that I could name right off the top of my head. And yeah, just go deeper, as deep as you have the resource of time and the fortitude to look into. This is an amazing opportunity to really out there for. Just like it was in the Depression, just like it was at the fall of the Soviet Union, people who are aware of what the hell was going on cleaned up. They saw where there was a need and filled it. I pulled over to buy one of these facial masks, just for me, because it was a novelty, mm-hmm. because it was set up as a stand. They make them themselves, right? Like these cloth masks, which of course will do nothing to prevent a virus from passing through it because the virus is way too small. But still, they're beautiful masks and they're handmade. And so it's a 16-year-old girl or something like that selling on one side all the beautiful masks that are handmade, on the other side Easter baskets. Happy Easter, by the way. Yeah. And there was just like those two things like that, like hitting both markets right there, and probably like making thousands of dollars with everyone pulling over and buying like two masks for $25 kind of thing. And like I said, I feel like I'm like in some I don't know, festival like Lollapalooza, and we're all putting that wristband on kind of thing, and and now I'm getting my novelty souvenir face mask that I don't know when I'll decide to put it on for the first time, but yeah, it was an opportunity where I saw that entrepreneurial spirit in this young woman who set up a stand and is making it hand over fist with money.
Yep.
Finding a need and filling it like that. Now, I prefer that it was a need that was less like promoting the fear, but that's what the Easter baskets were about. Right. Those were real things, like to promote real unity around, I don't know, come on, man, the little kids and the Easter egg hunts going on right now and all day and everything like that. That's awesome. I remember Easter egg hunts. And, there's probably not enough like whole groups of little children all playing together doing that right now. And that's so like those who are actually out there getting their kids together and doing that because they don't have a fear of, I would say, an irrational fear, I would say a lack of evidence kind of fear. They're actually understanding that getting together is really important. So my message is that of really seeing the opportunity in this situation.
Yep, indeed, right there with you. So I guess there's a lot of things going on right now with the pandemic, whatever you want to call it, whatever the audience wants to call it. That doesn't matter to me. With that going on with the economy, I'm just curious. I mean, what's your outlook on the future? I mean, what do you think if you had to posit, I guess make some loose predictions or something of the sort? I mean, what do you think's how do you think this is going to play out?
I'm kind of concerned that they could implement actual like vast numbers of death from, any which way possible. I mean, there's so many ways to kill people.
Right.
And if I see evidence that starts to happen, I'm going to take a guess that it won't happen everywhere simultaneously. Then there's not much I can really do about it, because I could be like literally number one, and so could you.
Mm-hmm.
Or we could just watch it happen basically from like far away or something like that. Like I'm hoping I chose a good location to watch all this stuff go down. I'm hoping that economically speaking, the dollar completely doesn't crash, because I still use dollars and I don't want to see like hyperinflation happen. But in case that does happen, I'm going to do my best to adapt to it. I guess if I have to, I'll go camping. If they enforce things like mandatory testing, I will have to do that, and that sucks. And if I, for making money or for commerce, for like if everyone has a card, to show that they tested negative, and that allows them to use a bank card or to a bank or to shop in a supermarket or that's another issue. Like if I see these things coming that way, I want to be ready to anecdote any type of medicine that might be forced upon me, or vaccine that might be forced upon me. And I'm kind of aware of how to antidote a bunch of different things. Like I'm aware of what the toxins are in these medicines and in the vaccines, since luckily they have ingredients lists. I'm aware of how to test them and try to make it better. No guarantees. It's always better without it. I would resist till the end, basically. I'm not like die before I get a vaccine. I would simply just, take the vaccine at the last resort, and then try to take the type of heavy metal remover medicines that I know how to get, and other substances to boost up my metabolism to deal with the toxin. I think since the whole thing hit me and blindsided me for like that they were going to shut down travel for everyone,
Right.
that all governments would work in lockstep, that they would fully reveal the level of global governance that's already going on, that they'd tip their hand like that. I was always afraid of when's it going to happen. And I was told back in 2001 from a certain movie series I watched that it was the World War III was supposed to happen 2019, 2020 right now. And since it didn't happen during 2019, I kind of was like, oh, I guess that was wrong.
Yeah.
And now I'm seeing it happen. I guess I try to do that, prepare for the worst. I was mentioning some of the worst, what's the worst case scenario? They melt you, with electromagnetic weaponry and other things like that. That's pretty bad, and it's blamed on a biological. That's also, well, if you're dead, your troubles are over, moving on to the next realm, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
If you are injured, well, now it's on you to handle that. If you're economically, financially injured, now it's on you to figure that one out. Those who are having to pivot. I had to pivot my business to go to a lower income making paycheck job working for disabled people, also considered essential, and I had to like less emphasis on the healthcare work that I was doing. And I'm also going to pivot to online consulting work, online teaching stuff that I do.
Right.
That is for sure. I still have a client where I get to teach these critical thinking and emotional balancing skills every month. So I think it's a good time to just take in mind, I don't know what's going to happen, Shane. I just am trying to prepare for like the worst of it. I don't trust the ruling class as far as I can throw them. And by ruling class, I simply mean that there seems to be a great deal of intelligence behind the coordinated effects of how people made a killing at the top of the market, crashed the market, and are buying in at the bottom of the market.
Mm-hmm.
That shows forethought. So be one of the guys and be one of the people out there who buy into the bottom of the market and prepare, and be prepared in all these other ways too. Man, I don't know what they're going to do. Georgia Guidestones and getting it down to 500 million people, that's pretty bad.
Yeah.
What do you think they're going to do, Shane?
What do I think they're gonna do? I don't. And see, this is and this is the hard. I mentioned this in my last stream, but it kind of changes like day by day. Like sometimes, I thought, like, I listened to David Crow stuff, and then I listened to somebody, and like, shit, maybe it's a bioweapon. I had a Fort Detrick. Damn, like maybe that's a possibility too. Like I don't know. Like so I get back to that point of like extreme uncertainty where it's like, it could be really bad, or it could just be like, oh, this is total bullshit. Like I kind of fluctuate between those positions, and it seems strange, but I guess it depends upon what podcast I'm listening to, what what paper I'm reading, or whatever that influences me. But because I mean, it's the difficult thing is. This is unprecedented. I mean, they've never had most of the population of the world locked up in their houses before. Could they, could they in a few weeks or a month just kind of start rolling it back and say, we got done what we need to get done, and things can, somewhat go back to normal now? That's sure, maybe that's a possibility. But at the same time, you look at the history of governments. Why would they let up if they don't have to? So, I mean, if things continue as they're going now, I mean, I see it going until people. I'm not saying, like armed resistance. I'm saying until people, until they hit a point where people finally say, all right, yeah, that's too far. We're done there. But I don't know what that point is. I don't know what that point is for Americans anymore. Not that I knew before, but
I don't know what that point is for anyone.
Yeah, for anyone. But yeah, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
So it depends. Yeah, it depends
but
upon what they
I
think they can get away with.
Happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely have no idea what they're going to get done, in this case, but I think of it like a wave. Like, I'm not going to push the wave. I cannot deflect this wave. This wave is like a humongous wave of, like, the wave of all the people wearing masks and keeping a social distancing, quarantining themselves, like that kind of thing. Like, I don't want to push against that. It's that's like trying to tell people not to go on TikTok and post their dance videos. That's ridiculous. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
So, in the case of dance videos, that's awesome. In the case of social distancing and hurting themselves with toxic, hand sanitizers and Lysol, everything, and not getting enough sun out there, not going out into that awesome real sun behind me right now. That's dangerous for people. So yeah, I think that it's a good time for opportunity, but I'm always concerned about what the ruling class will do. There's been enough evidence that there is a ruling class. There seems to be enough evidence that there is thought behind every single action. Every action that they take benefits them in like a nice myriad, a plethora of different ways. Each
right.
type of action like that.
Right,
so,
and they
they
conveniently write it in books too that you can read, and you can kind of discover their plans and know these things are coming.
Yeah, so it's all available out there. Again, if you have the fortitude, intellectually and emotionally, if you have that ability to look into it. And for those people who are really upset, first of all, they didn't listen to this whole thing. They didn't watch this whole thing. No. Because this is, like, I'm just poking holes in your confirmation bias. I totally get it. You want to believe, you build self-esteem on being right. I build self-esteem on finding ways that I got it wrong and ways that I got it right. And, I move forward that way because I have gotten it wrong, I think, a bunch of times. And yeah, one more cry to please consider trying agnosticism. Step into uncertainty that you don't know, and then you do your best to get the knowledge, to gain understanding with that knowledge, and design practical applications of that knowledge and understanding called wisdom. That you can do that if you have the ability to do so. And for those who can't do that because they're too, I would say, in emotional turmoil right now, please have patience with those folks. Spend the time with them if you have the patience. Don't spend time with them if you don't. Limit limit those people from your life if you want to, and pay attention to which way the smoke is blowing. It's a big, weird world out there.
Yep. Pay. It's one of those rare times over the past 3 or 4 years of this podcast where I'll tell you to pay attention to pay really close attention to what's going on. So yeah, there's we don't know. Yeah, we don't know what's gonna happen. So I guess where can I'll put a link to voluntaryvisions.com. The art, I guess the place where you put all your previous guest appearances. But where else? There's contentsafe.co as well. Where else can people find your work or follow you?
Notmedicaladvice.co is a work in progress, but by the time that this show goes up, I'm hoping to change the copy and make the funnel solid on that one. And that offers, again, the showcasing medical treatments and options that you never heard of or never seriously considered. Notmedicaladvice.co.
Awesome. Very good. Well, I will certainly put all those links in the show notes below. And I appreciate you coming on again, man. It was a fun discussion. I wish, as I've heard everyone say on really every other podcast, I wish it was better under better circumstances. But at the same time, I think it was an important discussion to have, and I'm glad we had it. So, any other closing thoughts for the listeners before I close this out?
No, I'm just going to say, please, out there, if you don't have optimism, you can borrow some of mine, because I've got some right now. And if you can, just please have patience with those who are really upset right now. That's my last closing words.
Okay. Very good, very good. And for you guys, the listeners, thanks so much for tuning in. Looks like we had a few folks that were tuned in live. It was definitely a great thing. But definitely put it on the podcast feed as well. But for the folks that are here, libertarianattack.com for all of your for your anarchist books or strategy guides, to increase your personal freedom. We can also help authors through the publishing process. libertarianattack.com/publish. So share your story, find your freedom. That's about all I have for you. I'm just going to make it short because tomorrow I'll be back here at 2 p.m. Interviewing Ryan Christon from The Last American Vagabond. So we'll going. It'll be a good discussion. Just see you there at 2 p.m. tomorrow, right here on this channel. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Big thanks to Darrell again, and thank you guys for tuning in. Until next time, tomorrow, we'll talk soon.